Welcome back. In this video, I bond the starboard side shear clamp, which is a fix from a failed process that I started back in fall 2024. So I'm finally ready to move over to the starboard side of the boat. And if you remember, I had notched these a long time ago and tried a different methodology. But now, after having done the port side shear clamp, I have a better idea of what the notches need to look like on each frame. And you can see there's a pretty big difference in planning on frame 1, similar on frame 2. And you can kind of go back to just see that there's just a little bit more work needs to be done. But at the back of the boat, it's really not that bad. As I did with the port side shear clamp, I start by laminating the 3 layers of the shear clamp with unthickened and then thickened epoxy. After about 2 hours of work time, the shear clamp laminate was dry fit to the boat to set overnight. The next day, I removed the clamps and marked the outermost edge of the shear clamp with a red colored pencil. This marking is on the bottom of the shear clamp at the back end of the boat and on the top of the shear clamp at the front end of the boat. By keeping this marking in place when I power plane or sand, it ensures that I do not remove too much material. Here, I just want you to see the back side of the shear clamp. It's got a lot of epoxy, so my next step will be to clean that up. As you hopefully saw in that video clip, I cleaned up the epoxy off the back side of the shear clamp. And because it's concave up here at the front, I had to use the belt sander, but over at the back, I was able to use the power planer. So I have this mostly cleaned up, which is good. A couple bad things, if you build this yourself, I often joke that I don't have enough clamps, and I have some gaps. I have a gap here, and I have a gap in the back, which would never be acceptable if you were trying to build Temptress and put a V8 engine in it and drive 60 miles per hour. As I said before, I'm going to put an electric motor in this and make this more of just a tooling around kind of watercraft. But what I'm going to have to do is put epoxy to fill the gap here and the one in the back. But yeah, probably should have more clamps and clamp this more thoroughly. And rather than these trigger clamps, I think some good old-fashioned C clamps would have made a lot more sense. Maybe put a board on them to get more even distribution of force. But we move on. So what I'm trying to do is really work from the front backwards to get the shear clamp aligned to the frames in the stem. And where the boat is curving inward towards the front, I want to work to the
back side or the aft side of the frames and try to get a 1/4 inch overlap. And ultimately, I gotta take some macro gaps out of here. Like clearly this notch needs to be cut further in the front, but I'm not gonna get these perfect. I'm just trying to get them roughed in. I'm gonna start with the stem and I'm gonna work my way backwards. Here it's pretty interesting because the back side is lined up well, but I got a big gap here. And you just have to remind yourself that, remember I cut these notches a long time ago and I was planning to put this together in a different manner. I didn't have a CNC shaped shear clamp. I was trying to bend straight timbers, so this one takes a little bit of work.
From watching Dan and Andrew, I learned this simple method to mark the cut line to align with the notch. And because I had a gap at frame 1, I work on notching frame 2 a bit further so I can get everything to fit together.
So I'm having a hard time getting everything put together. And yes, this is not perfect because I cut the notches the wrong way the first time, but we'll make it work. Okay, here you can start seeing that I got these notches need to be a lot deeper further back. So I'm gonna hold the front in place and I'm gonna notch these in so I can get a quarter inch gap here.
So I go about measuring the top of the shear clamp and the notches to make sure I'll have a 1/4 inch overhang over the side of the boat. the transom, the notch was too deep and I had to fix it by adding a shim. After about 3 hours of work, the shear clamp was dry fit to the frames. But I want you to see I had a lot more trouble getting the overhang correct on frames 2 and 3. So I'm gonna have to work on those, probably sand the frames down a little bit to get the proper overhang. Frame 4 looks good. 5, 6, everything's getting pretty good. Maybe not here at frame 7. I can't decide if I gotta have more of an overhang or what's going on all the way back. But what I want you to see is my notches get a little bit weird at the back from the old way I was doing it. And all the way here at the transom, I'm gonna have to put a shim in there. But I think, given everything, I'm pretty pleased with how this has come together. Again, this will be a slow cruising boat, not a super fast boat. So I think I can get away with some of these mistakes. It was finally time to permanently bond the shear clamp. In addition to using the clamps and thickened epoxy, I put a screw at the front to hold the shear clamp to the stem and to the transom. Starting from the stem, I begin to bond the shear clamp, first with unthickened epoxy and then thickened epoxy, both with the high density filler. And because I have large gaps, this time I added some mahogany sawdust for color. And finally, I fillet and clean up the excess epoxy. While not required at this stage, I coated the bottom side of the shear clamp with unthickened epoxy. This entire bonding and coating process only took about 30 minutes. The next day, with the clamps removed, we get to see the finished shear clamp. With a closer view, we can see how the shim and the thickened epoxy filled the gaps between the shear clamp and the frame. We can also see the air bubbles in the epoxy coating because the garage was too cold to allow the epoxy to flow. But I'll take it as a successful fix to the starboard side shear clamp. Till next time, cheers.